I think we could get into like a whole kind of huge conversation around organizational design and development. It's another
Yeah,
thing that I
it
talk quite a lot about.
changes. Yeah.
Because I think it's really, the idea of different teams and even just the thought of like, well, customer education should be its own team is not necessarily what I'm saying. What I'm thinking more
Hmm.
is about business strategy. And when you have business strategy, like each department is essentially, or should be having its own strategy that supports the overall business strategy. So if you think about it as like a pyramid, you have your ultimate business or business unit goal and vision, and then each department within that has its goal and vision that supports that. And then each team within each of those departments has its goal to support, et cetera. So it kind of ladders that way. So regardless of where you actually put a quote customer education team or the people working on that, it's more so, it's not so much about the teams, it's about the commonality of the goals that they are supporting, right? So if a customer success individual, let's not even it's like let's say scratch the idea of teams, but let's say you have like a customer success manager who's working on, you know, increasing the ARR of their book,
Hmm.
right? So they have a few customers they're working with, and they're trying to increase ARR of their book, and they know from seeing like repeated issues that there is a knowledge gap, that there's a knowledge gap that customers have to, to get more value out of the product. And so they're kind of seeing some churn happen because if only they understood and really got the value of the product more by not just knowing which buttons to click, but really understanding how to use that product in a way that would drive their own outcomes, they feel like they could help reduce retention.
Hmm.
So in some scenarios, you may see that customer success manager just jump in and start teaching them things. But that's where that person could connect really well with somebody working specifically on the education side and can almost partner on this broader goal of like, let's reduce retention. Because I'm seeing this in my clients. I'm seeing that there's a lot of turnover. I'm seeing this thrash because there's this knowledge gap in this whatever area. Connect with someone that understands how to build education and can build that at scale. Because more than likely, that's happening across other clients as well, right? It's not just that CSM's book. So it's really about, and maybe this is also going to kind of go into the bottom up, top down approach, but it's like really thinking about coming together to solve the same common problems and using those different skills. So somebody that's on the CS side, a customer success manager, is going to have more of the direct relationship. They're going to understand the very specific nuanced needs of their clients. They're going to be in that day to day of what they're trying to achieve. That's what their, primary skill set is. Whereas somebody in the customer education side ideally has the skill set around education, building impactful instructional design that's going to actually change behavior. Those two individuals, again, forgetting teams, those two individuals could actually work really powerfully together to drive the larger goal.
And it's definitely a whole, sometimes it's not even some task that we have to overcomplicate. It's just let's listen to our customers. What are their needs? What are they using our product for? What are the questions they're asking? And let's sit down and basically tackle those questions to proactively approach them before they actually get to me. Because as a customer success manager, what I want is to read data and say, okay, these are the customers I need to tackle because I need to help them receive their outcomes and their value versus actually be educating them in a phase of their journey where they actually need to start seeing more than like value. How can what approach can I do to start from bottom up, creating that customer education culture?
Yeah, so I think you kind of hit the nail on the head earlier, saying that it starts with listening to the customer, identifying what their goals are, what their needs are. With any education, it centers around the eventual outcome, right? We should be building something that helps people to achieve that outcome. And so if your client is, struggling to achieve an outcome, it's really just about listening to figure out what are the obstacles and what are the challenges and what are the things needed for them to achieve that outcome. In some cases, it may have nothing to do with education, and that's the stuff that you typically do as a CSM, which may be that they, need more,
Mhm.
whatever it is. Maybe they need more insight into their reports or whatever stuff that's like kind of not related to education. But in the places where it's about a knowledge gap or it's about a skill gap, you could, yes, a webinar is one way to do that. But I think more than talking specifically about the tactics of exactly how you
Mhm.
would do that, you want to capture what it is that you're trying to help them learn, right? So maybe it's like, and that could be done with some quick articles, quick tutorials. So it's not so much like, yes, do it as a webinar, or yes, do it as a, Loom video. It could be whatever the format is that best fits what you're trying to teach them. But I would say step one is to really understand and identify what it is that they need to know and
Mhm.
write that down, because you also may have that. This is a part that I like to really focus on, is not getting redundant and inefficient. And if like one CSM is focusing too much on, hey, my client needs to know how to use this part of the software, so I'm going to create a video for that, or I'm going to create a webinar for that. Meanwhile, your colleague could have the same problem with their client who's
Yeah.
already also created a webinar. So that's what I'm saying, like, find some place to capture this first and connect at a broader level to understand what the themes and trends are that you're seeing across your clients, so that you can have something that's more purposeful and not just like, haphazard, or maybe haphazard isn't the right word, but like just too ad hoc, like, kind of messy. Because I think that there's a much more scalable way
Yeah.
to build something that can be impactful.
Now, let's also touch on what happens inside within the company, right? And here is where softwares like Flola comes into help, because with Flola, you can eliminate repetitive admin tasks and save time. You can track the progress of implementations and see which projects overrun. You can accelerate time to value using repeatable templates. So the internal side is also important, like not only the customer facing role, but also what happens behind scenes. But it is definitely recommended to have someone in charge, right? Doesn't matter if it's the no, it doesn't matter who it is or the role. It is important to have someone that is focusing on those opportunities, because as we are doing a lot of things at the same time.
Well, so in the big picture, long term, absolutely. But I think if we kind of go back to your first question of how does someone start, especially if the majority of people listening to this right now are more entry level, or even just mid level customer success manager, you may feel like, well, I don't have somebody doing customer education, so I guess this is
Mhm.
relevant to me. That's not the case.
Mhm.
So there's phases, right? So phase one is kind of what I was saying before, is like, let's start gathering that information with your colleagues. You don't have to have somebody who's like, I'm head of customer education yet. You as customer success managers could be listening to this, understanding like, oh yeah, there's a gap here in how they understand this part of the product, or there's a complete industry knowledge gap here, like they don't understand how to do XYZ, and start gathering that like collaboratively with your other CSM, or customer success colleagues. And then you can start to sort of see the trends, and then you can tackle that as a team. So it's not that, oh, you need to have somebody who's in charge of customer education from day one immediately. If you don't have that, it doesn't mean you can't do anything. And now back to your point, once you get a sense of like those themes, then you as a team may decide like, oh, actually a webinar on this topic could be really impactful,
Mhm.
and then, or as an individual, you may say like, oh, actually I'm going to do a tutorial for this because I can see that a lot of our clients need that. And you can work together to kind of build this. Then the next step in a maturity model is really like bringing somebody in that can start to formalize that as a mature customer education program. But I think it's kind of like two conversations. One is, what can you do today if that's not in place? The second was, how can you really grow and become more of a mature uh, organization with that?
Absolutely. Always thinking about the scalable side. I think that it's key of always thinking about, yeah, this is the present, but okay, what could happen in the near future that we can always think about and make this scalable. One
Well,
of the
and
Mhm,
sorry if I get, but
mhm.
I really,
Absolutely,
really
please.
got that particular point, because it is true that I really feel like it's, especially with education. How do I word this? So I'm someone that's worked on the product side and the practitioner side. I've done quite a lot. I'm very into agile, and I'm certainly not someone that says you have to build everything out perfectly before you can launch it. But there is a balance when it comes to education, because if you get too messy and too scrappy, where you're just kind of putting a bunch of things out there, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years later, you have a big mess. And then
Oh
it's
yeah.
really quite challenging to kind of unravel all that to build something that's more cohesive. So that's why, if we just look at strategy in general and we look at the way that we execute things, if you have clarity in what you're building, it's like if you build a house, for example, you don't want to just be like, okay, well, we can do the kitchen today. Let's get the kitchen done. And put a door up and we'll come back to that later. And then, let's put the roof in place and then we'll build the rest later. Like then if you come back 6 months to build the house, you have kind of a pile of mess, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's like a crazy metaphor, but that's why it can be really much more impactful to be strategic from the beginning and to have that vision. Doesn't mean to have to be exactly like laid out for you, but to just kind of find that happy medium between being too scrappy and not having it all fully fleshed out. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that because at the end, it's also although we want to keep it tactical, but there is a big percentage, I will say, of up to bottom approach on keeping this customer education strategy as part of your overall goal as a company, right?
Yeah, and I personally am someone that's a big fan of a mix of top to bottom and bottom up. It's
Uh-huh.
it's not so there's different strategic ways of working, and some organizations will do very top down, which is, I'm setting the tone here, I'm telling you what to do, you guys do it. And
Yeah.
then that's, I'm basically setting goals downward and the goals are being met. Bottom up is everyone from the lower layers up is setting their own goals and kind of telling upward, this is what I'm going to work on. And so both of those could have merit, but I think both of them need to connect together, because you want the bottom up, because the people who are sort of on the front lines working day to day with the clients know the most. Those of us in executive positions have a lot more distance from what's really happening. So we need that bottom up like funnel to understand the signals, to understand what really needs to happen and what are the priorities. But then the top part is the strategic like over layer that has to really have clarity on what we're going for, what that long-term plan is, so that we kind of fit those two pieces together. So I pretty much always share the bottom up, top down, middle approach is really going to be very
Hybrid.
impactful. Yeah, for a lot of businesses.
Vicky, when it comes to motivating customers, help me out on this one, please. Because sometimes we have all the resources. We have our website where it comes to resources. We have a help center. We have webinars. But how can we motivate our customers to ask first to the resources they have and not us? Especially when those are stakeholders that they are really demanding and they maybe are not that tech savvy depending on the system. That was today's CSM Quick Lesson. For the full conversation and more practical tips, just go and check out today's episode description where you will have the link to the full conversation. Remember to hit follow, also follow us in the social media, and you can also go and check out our new website. Remember, keep learning, keep growing, and let's keep improving the world of customer success. Until next time.